and welcome. Boy, we are glad to be back after an awesome opening episode of the Tune-Up. We welcome you back to episode 2. Hi, folks. Once again, my name is Zach Tefelsky. I'm your host. You can just call me Zach or Zachary MT. And alongside me today is the same panelist from episode 1. I've got my good buddy Cody Sill above me today in the call. And next to him is Derek Smith. And then, of course, we have Marcus Vanderlee. Boy, we've got a good show ahead today, guys. We are going to cover all the topics that happened over the weekend, of course, headlined by the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray. And what a race that was. There's a lot of storylines coming out of that. And we're going to dive into every bit of it. And we're going to have a lot of good discussions with it. Remember, hang out with us in the chat. Join along. We'll have plenty of opportunities to interact throughout the show. And with that, guys, we're glad you're back for our first returning episode of the Tune-Up after, like I said, just a very successful episode 1. I could not be happier, guys, with how that went and everyone that joined us for that. We had at one point up to about 15 people watching for our interview portion, and to say that exceeded what I thought is possible for a first show, on a YouTube that's newly revived. I just can't say it enough. It's a credit to you guys here on the panel helping get the show advertised out, but more so the people that joined us, able to stick around with us and all throughout the show. As we preview what we're doing here today, guys, remember one of my big promises from last show is we will never ever have a show go that long again. And even if we do have some shows go long, it won't nearly be what that last one was, which was almost about 3 hours, I think, about 2 hours and 45
and a half.
minutes. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Well, nonetheless, previewing today's show, guys, we've got a great one ahead. We're going to, of course, like I said, cover the Clash. We're going to discuss so many different sub-bullet points of that. You won't want to miss it. And then we're going to talk about the future of the Clash. That's one of the big bullet points as well. And then, well, what's happening outside of NASCAR, the Clash this weekend, other NASCAR news. And by the way, one more thing with the Clash is you were here when we made our race picks last week. We're going to see who did the best after our first picks of the year. And we'll do all of that in our big headlining segment talking about the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray. As I was saying, though, stuff outside of that, NASCAR roars back at Rockingham. That happened earlier last week, right about a week ago, I'd say, is when they're starting to roll out the cars and test there. We're going to talk about that as well. And then it's not just all wheels and pavement today, guys. We're going to we have to tap into what's happening outside of the NASCAR motorsports world because there's been some bombshell trades in the NBA world. We're going to actually see who has any thoughts on the Luka Doncic trade with the Lakers. And then, of course, the big thing everyone's talking about, no matter if you're a fan or not, everyone knows it's Super Bowl week. And I feel like it's only appropriate that we spend some time to discuss that and, of course, make some Super Bowl picks. And then the show's not done there, but we have a couple more segments after that. We'll talk about current thoughts on the NASCAR media outlet. What that means is we're going to discuss the newly implemented news sources that NASCAR has output to allow us fans to have more outlets of enjoying the sports. Stuff from Tubi, the new NASCAR channel, and Max as well. Both streaming platforms have tapped in thanks to NASCAR. And then, of course, last but not least, chat room open discussion. Stick around to the end where we want to talk with you guys and we want to hear what your thoughts are and any hot button issues. We're happy to discuss it with you. All right, guys, with that, that is previewing our show today. And with that, there's nothing else left to do except dive into the Cookout Clash at the Madhouse, the Bowman Gray Stadium, the thing that had all the hype going in, a sold out crowd, and many would agree, probably lived up to the hype. You had everything you'd want in a quarter-mile short track race and at a grassroots facility, nonetheless, guys. And a lot of talking points deriving from it, a lot of beef, as one might expect from a short track, a lot of short track tempers, as our thumbnail would suggest as well. How about we dive right into it, though? And let's start with you, Cody. Um, to kind of get things started, don't go too deep into it, but I want to hear what your overall thoughts of the event are.
I think from a from NASCAR standpoint, it was a huge success. I think there was a lot of ifs, or if this was the right move, this is what we really need. Personally, I really enjoyed it watching as a fan. I think it had a lot of things here that really excited a fan of the sport. So I really did enjoy it. I think from people that I've also talked to that also watched it, they enjoyed it as well. Even had some people here that don't watch NASCAR too much here, and we're just trying to get into it here. They even enjoyed it as well. So overall, I think it was a huge success. And personally, I hope it's a tradition here that can maybe uh, give a little bit more stability to the Clash.
And Derek, it's kind of interesting. We go from the Coliseum in LA, a non-permanent racetrack, to a track that's kind of similar. It is a part-time football stadium, but it's a grassroots racing facility. I'm curious what your overall thoughts are on the event.
Well, I did think, but like I agree with Cody, I do believe that the Bowman race was a huge success in for NASCAR and also for the fans. I personally really enjoyed watching that race. Never actually saw much of Bowman Gray before, and this was kind of somewhat my introduction to it because of how old a track it was in NASCAR. Um, but I thought this was the right move on NASCAR, moving away from that LA Coliseum over down into southeastern United States there in Bowman Gray, Winston-Salem. Uh, just overall, when I think of the Coliseum, I just never cared for it. It was a cool idea to start off, obviously, renovating that LA Coliseum to become a NASCAR track, but it just never got quite the amount of publicity that I think they wanted. And you could tell they were trying to milk that crowd to try and get in, and it was just overall a failed experiment. So this was a great move by NASCAR, and overall it was a great race.
And Marcus, it's I saw some kind of assessments of this, and I have to agree. People, watching how the crowd reacted to the race there at Bowman Gray, it was like you had fans that were more educated on the matter, as would be expected compared to the Coliseum, where it was definitely a stunt to kind of branch NASCAR out as a brand and try to bring in new spectators. But Bowman Gray, that's as core of a racing fan as it gets. Curious what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, so I watched the other day while waiting for the modified race. They played this Bowman Gray documentary, and just the aura that track brings compared to places like LA. Even when they had the Fontana crowd, like LA just never compared to what Bowman Gray was. Because over the years, you just have years and years and years and years of history there. Great drivers have been there in the past. Even in the last, people forget, like the last 12 years ago, you had some of the younger up and coming Cup stars racing in that Bowman Gray race, such as, yesterday's winner, Chase Elliott. So I think it was actually cool to see, how the crowd, they were all rowdy. They were riled up, especially for Burt Myers and Tim Brown being there. All riled up just to see NASCAR come back compared to what LA was, where they couldn't even get a quarter of the stadium full with free tickets.
And I will say the Coliseum in LA for the Clash started out hot. They really packed it in for the 2022 event there. Then it kind of dissipated just a little bit in 2023. It was a dedicated night race, and then of course last year kind of a tough situation to where they pushed the race back to Saturday unexpectedly because they didn't want to deal with rain on Sunday. And most people would agree, good decision there. It just probably wasn't the most convenient. Tough to tell how many people would have shown up had the weather been good and it would have ran on schedule. But that 2024 crowd was pretty bad. I mean, a lot of empty seats there.
I mean, they were just scraping for any crumbs that they could get to get more people in. So
And meanwhile, Bowman Gray, sellout. I think Mike Joy said 17,000 strong to where it got to the point to where it was standing room only, and the every camera angle would reflect that. Even on Saturday, I mean, it wasn't technically a sellout. You can find maybe a couple empty seats here and there, but it almost was. It was pretty close to full capacity, and that was Saturday. They did the modified race that afternoon, and then they had the practice qualifying type deal followed by the heats, and that all culminated to what we had here on Sunday. We're going to get into all of that in depth later. And while I did mention heats, guys, we saw the heats. That was all of the racing activity on Saturday after they did the practice slash qualifying to get positioning for those heats. And I mean, Heat 1 certainly was much different than the rest of those heats on Saturday. A lot more crazy. maybe expected to see that, considering that these drivers are racing for the first time on Bowman Gray in the Cup cars. And then, you know what, I think all the drivers in the rest of the heat said, you know what, there's no reason to be doing that. We still need to preserve these race cars if we want to race going forward. So curious what everyone's thoughts are on the heats, Cody.
Yeah, honestly, I think the heats here, it was two wild heats, and then in between them, it was kind of just more of a calm, tame heat. The first heat, no doubt, I think was a story of the night. That one was very wild. A lot of people beating and banging. We had a lot of, I think it was Haley and Bush. They were going at each other a lot. Um, overall, it was a really good heat. Um, and then the second and thirds, they kind of calmed it down. And the final one, it also sparked up a lot of action. So I think it was really cool. Really nice to see how that all played out and everything. I think the drivers liked it as well, from what I've heard. They liked how the format ran and everything. So, and for the most part, I think you got most of your heavy hitters um, making it through the heats. Maybe besides Larson, you saw Eric Jones, Blaney. But for the most part, you got most of the heavy hitters making it onto the main event through the heat. So overall, I think it was a pretty good showing.
It is a good point you bring up because we were talking about it as we were watching it, and even after the LCQ, which we'll get into momentarily as well, you could argue that that was probably the best possible field out of all the cars entered into the race from a Cup Series standpoint, as far as drivers, brands, and how good they are subjectively, and just all the big teams getting their cars in. There really wasn't one notable left out, besides a few, but they kind of fall into that category of, are they better than the jars that they lost to? It's kind of hit or miss depending on who you talk to. I'm curious, Derek, would you agree with that?
Yeah, for the most part. There's obviously cars like Burt Myers and Tim Brown. They had a less
Legends
better
of the racetrack, just not in
yes,
the cup cars there.
exactly. But it's just the cup car that they were assigned. It was just overall they just couldn't get a great end of the cookie. And
You could tell they were struggling at first. Then
oh yeah,
certainly Burt Myers, which we'll talk about later with him and Stenhouse, he started to figure it out. He was making some passes there in the LCQ, but yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, Derek, but it was interesting you seeing those legends of Bowman Gray struggle in the cup car at first. Probably expected.
yeah, for sure.
And Marcus, the Heat's interesting, certainly from a Kyle Busch fan standpoint. For Heat one that had the bulk of
Mhm.
the craziness, Kyle Busch certainly was not shorted of it. And we'll talk about that feud with Justin Haley here momentarily as well. We'll dive into that. If you could just push the Kyle Busch fandom aside just for a moment, though, Marcus, your thoughts on the Heats?
Honestly, overall, I mean, I think I got out of Bowman Gray what I was expecting to get out of Bowman Gray. Over the years, that place it earned the name the Madhouse, and Heat won. Not only Heat won the modified race, that they both proved why that is the Madhouse. You just had tons of beef during the Heat. I think we didn't see any. If they could have on Saturday night, I think they would have fought, but they didn't fight because you could have gone the next day and junked the guy that went and fought you. So I think they were a little smart about that. But honestly, the other three were pretty tame from what I saw. Maybe was it Heat 4 that kind of got a little crazy, I
Yeah, it
think?
was like Heat 1 was the craziest, then Heat 4 had a hint of craziness. Heat 2
And
and 3, though, didn't have much going on besides just the drivers racing.
yeah. And I think overall, just all those heats were crazy, especially Heat 1. That's where we saw, also, I forgot about it. That's where we saw Blaney get put in a situation he got put in where, he just didn't run good the whole race.
Yep.
And then near the end, Ty Dillon got into him. And from there, they just had problem after problem until Sunday, where they got to where they were. I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit, though.
Yep. We're going to get to a lot of things in a little bit. It's probably going to sound like a broken record here because we're trying to stay on a schedule. My promise to you guys was, well, we went way too long in episode one. We got to get consistently on schedule with these run sheets I make before the show. And we're just setting the table here. Still haven't even gotten into our discussion of the main event. And real quickly, appreciate all of you joining us so far. Shout out to Tyler Sage, Axel, all dropping a chat there, and we're glad you're with us. And as we move past the Keats, guys, how about we dive into some of those kind of issues that we saw before the main event? Tempers flaring at the Madhouse, drivers getting mad at each other, and it started in Heat 1, as we alluded to, with Kyle Busch and Justin Haley just really getting into each other. Kyle Busch not happy with Justin Haley, and I do want to start with you, Marcus. From your standpoint, thoughts on that incident there, which Justin Haley got in Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch wasn't too happy. Let him know throughout the entire duration of that first yellow.
Hmm. Yeah. So from a Kyle Busch standpoint, I was yelling through my TV hoping that someone would get Justin if it wasn't Kyle that got him. But from a normal fan standpoint, I mean, it looked like Justin might have thought that he either was ticked off that he got moved in the first place, or he thought Kyle was the one that moved him the turn before, because I believe it was Ross Chastain that actually hit Justin uh, up high, and then Chastain got by him, and then all that, and Bush went to the inside, and Haley turned down thinking it was Bush that moved him. So that's what it looked like to me overall. But in the end, we all saw Kyle got the good end of that, and then in the LCQ, Haley just went on to make another enemy instead of actually make the show. But I know we'll get to that in a little bit too.
Well, we'll get to it right here, as a matter of fact. I mean,
Wow.
while Justin Haley first run-in was with Kyle Busch, that wasn't the end of drivers that did not really appreciate the way he was racing. And Derek, uh, we all saw it. Justin Haley was on the receiving end of Ty Gibbs. Was he trying to ramp up on him, or was he just trying to sideswipe?
Yeah, I really don't think he was trying to destroy his car like that. Obviously, he wanted a side swipe before he got to pit road. Uh, the incident before that was very unfortunate for Ty Gibbs, and his anger just ran out on Justin Haley, similar to Kyle Busch. But
I think officially that car might have completely left the earth. We're not sure yet, but all the wheels certainly looked like they did.
yeah, I mean, when you look at the thumbnail in this video, I mean, it's just crazy how much air he got just by what felt like a little tap, and then he's like, oh shit, and then it just like went right back to pit road. So it was just a funny sequence of events.
What would you do, Cody, if you were in Justin Haley's position, a proven talent, trying to make his way up, still a lot of future ahead of him, now with Spire trying to make a name for himself with that one Cup Series win under his belt, but making Kyle Busch mad, and then subsequently the driver that took Kyle Busch's original seat also got mad at him, both for two different reasons.
Yeah, not the way you want to start off your season here. I am a pretty big Justin Haley fan in my own right. So for me, I was actually kind of surprised by his aggression that he had, because Justin's not really known to do that. He's not really known as a very aggressive racer. He definitely proved a lot of people wrong when he did all that though. But I don't know. I think it was just Bowman Gray. I think that was just what you get when you come to Bowman Gray. I think that's why it's called the Madhouse. I think that's
Mhm.
why people love going there and watching races there. So, um, it had to be somebody. I guess Justin Haley drew the short straw.
And I'm curious what the chat thinks. If you guys side with any particular driver on those kind of two incidents that involve the same one driver, and you know, interestingly enough, that all kind of culminated to more of what we would see at the Madhouse Racing. And as we shift gears here, kind of focusing our discussion on the LCQ, that event, of course, happened on Sunday. It preceded the main event. And I do want to point out, going back to the Coliseum clashes, it seemed like they had issues promoting the fact that the cars were racing before the main event, and whether people did not care or they did not know it, the seats definitely weren't as filled at the Coliseum before the main events. But at Bowman Gray, basically everyone was there for the start, the heats on Saturday, and then, well, hell, even the practice on Saturday, the people did not want to be late. And then when the LCQ started on Sunday, everyone was there. All those people stayed throughout the checkered flag at the end. So we're going to open it up now to thoughts on the LCQ, which was definitely pretty good heat for a last chance qualifier. It had a lot of craziness and another big instant we're going to focus on here in just a little bit. I'll start with you, Marcus. Thoughts on LCQ? Was it what you expected? A little bit too crazy? A little bit not crazy enough?
Well, I mean, starting out with the LCQ, you saw it got crazy from the start with the Dillon brothers. Both of them were shipping each other each corner and whatnot. For a little bit, it looked like Ty Dillon maybe had a shot, and then it went away as soon as Austin got to him. So already a crazy start. Then you just got people like Larson, Jones, Austin Dillon did get back up there eventually. They were all racing hard against each other for the next however many laps until on a late restart. I know those three got into it, and it took out Jones out of the running ultimately. So I think it definitely could have been a little cleaner, but also desperation sinks in with
Mhm.
those 75 laps that you're trying to make the main event, which is what we saw. We saw it out of Larson, we saw it out of Jones, and all of them. Even Josh Berry, we saw desperation out of him, but that
Yeah.
desperation got him somewhere.
Yeah, you saw a lot of drivers trying to do whatever it takes to make the main event at Bowman Gray, and for an LCQ that only allowed two to transfer in plus the points provisional, I'm actually curious. While we didn't have this on a topic to discuss, it seems borderline controversial. If you're in Ryan Blaney's position, or I should say, unbiased viewer, Ryan Blaney just tried to run laps because he knew he had the points provisional. Would you be opposed to, say, a rule that states someone in line for the provisional has to at least finish on the lead lap, Derek?
Um, I'd probably say that I'm not opposed to it. I just feel like he did enough last season to get that
Yeah,
privilege
that's a
of
good point.
getting in, and just overall, um, I feel like he doesn't have to try as hard for a preseason event
Hmm.
when he tried really hard last season.
Curious what the chat thinks of that as well. Do you think the provisional should be revisited on how it's awarded? Because Ryan Blaney, while the reason he wasn't in contention in the LCQ was because of mechanical issues, the whole team obviously knew that they didn't have to do much besides run laps, and then they'd be in the main event. But I'll shift it to you, Cody. Just looking at the LCQ as a whole, do you think that there's some potential that was shown from some drivers that obviously aren't always competing for wins every week? Because that's kind of what you had there in the LCQ. You had a basket of drivers that obviously weren't good enough to make the main event straight in on heats, and so they all raced each other, and we kind of got to see battles that we don't normally see up front, but with the exception of Kyle Larson, of course, probably.
Yeah, Eric Jones did not lead one lap all last year, and he led four there before
Mm.
getting taken out there in the LCQ. Which honestly, that is a great turnaround from obviously a disappointing season last year. The Legacy Motor Club, obviously they're trying to get their feet more under them. Switching over to Toyota, that's a big move manufacturers. I still think they're still trying to find their footing. I hope this year we see improvement. I saw Jonathan Nemechek. He was also seemed like he was pretty fast in the LCQ as well. And I do want to also point this out too, like you said with the fans. Um, I've been lucky enough in the last handful of years to go to two inaugural events at racetracks that the Cup Series have ever gone to, Gateway and Nashville. And Nashville, I was no doubt going to be there whenever the Cup cars hit the track for the first time. And same with Gateway. I mean, I went all 3 days. The first year Gateway was there, first ever practice, and I think it was more of the prestige of having your track on a Cup Series schedule, clash or not. It's something historic. There's only been a certain number of tracks here in the world that have been graced by the Cup Series, and especially nowadays with so many so many establishments getting the get graced by the Cup Series. It was really nice to see that. So, um, I definitely see where the crowd came from just for a practice, and I think you should expect that too for Rockingham this year for the return
Yeah.
for Xfinity trucks.
Some people might think it's an oversaturated market well, there's Marcus, to an oversaturated market to have three different tracks all getting Cup Series races in North Carolina, but think of it this way. This is at least my opinion. We sent the haulers and all the teams across the country for a exhibition race when it was at the Coliseum. Now they can drive not far at all for an exhibition race, which is certainly much more convenient for the cost that the teams have to spend on. and it's already in NASCAR country. You know, you're going to get those hardcore fans as we talked about. So not just that with Bowman Gray, but Cody brought up Rockingham. I think we'll see kind of a similar situation. Maybe it opens up the door for more usage of Rockingham as example going forward. Remember, it's only not seeing a cup date this year; it's seeing Xfinity. But who knows what more could come of that? And we're going to talk about, before we shift off our Clash discussion, the future outlook of the Clash as well. Let's shift gears, though, right now to another topic here. Staying with the LCQ, and one of the most controversial incidents we saw, certainly the fans at the stadium were very vocal about it, but we saw Bowman Gray legend Burt Myers get turned by Ricky Stenhouse. Now, I don't want to entirely blame the wreck on Stenhouse, and this is where we might have some differing opinions, but I saw a replay, and it looked like Burt Myers probably came down more than Stenhouse turned him. I'm curious, Marcus, if you had any
Mhm.
thoughts on that incident.
Yes. Well, first off, I gotta say it's a big crime that Fox missed that big of a wreck on a quarter-mile track. It's a shame that I had to find it from a fan view on Twitter, but yeah, it definitely looks like Burt Myers. The car just completely went sideways off the corner, and I think he was just trying to collect it, and then Stenhouse just happened to be wrong place, wrong time. But the Bowman Gray crowd, they're going to be very passionate about their hometown hero. Whether you're a Tim Brown or a Burt Myers fan there, it looked like a lot of people were not happy at Stenhouse. You saw videos of, Stenhouse getting flipped off by the whole crowd under red
Hmm.
flags and cautions and all that. So you could tell they weren't happy, but overall, I think it was mostly on Burt Myers. But I gotta say, he wasn't doing terrible.
He was doing so good before
He
that.
got the Amerivet. He got an Amerivet car up to eighth in that
After
race.
not doing good at all in the heats and
Yeah,
stuff.
like he was completely outclassing Tim Brown, who ended up still going to get a top 10 later on. But I think Burt Myers definitely, if there was more time for him, I think he could have had a chance to make it to the main show.
Yeah, it's a shame that that'll probably be the only time we see him in a cup car anytime soon, unless they come back to Bowman Gray. He might get
Yeah.
another chance. I see running the high banks in the chat. He'll ask us. That's a good question. We'll have to get to that sooner or later, if not by the end of the show in the chat room. Open discussion. Dale Stinkart Jr. in the chat as well. So we're gonna stick with this discussion, though. I want to give you to Derek and Cody a chance to offer your opinion on one of the more hot button incidents from Sunday with Burt Myers and Ricky Stenhouse. Derek, I mean, that was a hard hit.
Yeah, I mean, like going back to Marcus's point of the crowd basically booing Stenhouse, it's easy to be biased towards the legendary Burt Myers at Bowman Gray Stadium,
Hmm.
and when it comes down to the actual incident, I think that it was a true racing incident. I
Yeah.
mean, like you said, Burt Myers turned down on him, and Stenhouse also just sent it in, and I mean that's just what happens in racing. I mean, I don't fault either driver.
It doesn't help that Stenhouse doesn't have a good track record with the NASCAR fan base. You know, people call him Wrecky Spinhouse, and
Yeah.
he didn't have a good outing at 2018 Daytona night race, and that's really where that call all kind of kicked off at. He's had some other run-ins as well, particularly with non-NASCAR regulars. He had some issues with, I think, excuse me,
Kamui
Kobayashi. I'll just
Kobayashi.
at Coda there, and I think at the Indy Road Course as well. And Derek,
And don't forget the Kyle Busch incident last year
yeah,
at
yeah,
the hauler.
yeah, feel free to butt in here. I think the way the meeting favors our mics is kind of all even, so I don't mind having a more unscripted discussion here. Same goes with the chat. Like I said, always looking to the right, always trying to keep an eye on what discussions we're having. Stick around. This show's gonna get more interactive as we get to our later segments. And like I said, keep those questions coming. If we don't hit them now, we'll hit them by the end of the show. And because Cody, I haven't asked you, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Burt Myers. Uh, do you think anything was big? Do you think there's anything more there, I should say, than what the replay showed?
No, I don't think so. I think it goes back to what I said a while ago. I think it's Bowman Gray. If anyone knows Bowman Gray, it's Burt Myers. So,
Mm,
um, no doubt. It's funny that this all happened though, because I've been rewatching NASCAR races, and I started with 2007 season, and I just and finishing up the Busch Series at Fontana. And an incident quite similar like this happened in that race. It was Jason Leffler, uh, Kenny Wallace, and Juan Paul Montoya, and they were three wide down the front stretch. And Leffler, I guess he thought he was clear, and he comes up in front of Kenny, hard hitting to the wall. Montoya slams into him, all four wheels off the ground. And then in Leffler's interview, he says that Kenny Wallace comes down, and in every angle whatsoever, I mean, it's pretty clear that Leffler kind of cleared himself up. But I think it's just one of those things where a driver never really likes to admit when he's wrong, even if they say they want
Yeah.
to. Driver does not want to admit when he's wrong. Um, I think if really, yeah, like Dar said, I think it was more of a racing incident. I don't think there was really anything more to that. So like I said, Bowman Gray's Bowman Gray. It's the Madhouse for a reason.
What did you guys think of how that Burt Myers car reacted to the crash, as in how it got damaged? That was probably the biggest damage we saw all event long. Besides, I mean, we saw Ty Gibbs get up in the air, but certainly didn't receive any damage like Burt Myers did. We saw that front end all bent in and fluids leaking everywhere. Does it tell you anything about the next gen car? I'll start with you, Marcus.
I mean, that was definitely the biggest crash we saw. Biggest the car definitely crumpled under impact, which I think is the most important part because we've had issues with that in the past. Not only with Burnt Myers, but we saw that with John Hunter Nemechek. I feel like we hadn't touched on Nemechek in his heat at all, getting dumped by Ryan Priest.
No.
You saw him just get shipped into the wall, and the right rear completely crumpled on impact, which 2022 the car would not have crumpled like that. So I think it looks like NASCAR has been making improvements on how soft the car is versus how soft it isn't. Obviously, I think there's still a little improvement, like, between how stiff and how soft the car actually could be. But I think, you know, we saw the safer barriers definitely helped with that impact as well. Because even with how slow of a hit that was still a big hit.
Yeah, it was slow. I mean, you're not going too fast at Bowman Gray, and while he got turned at a high rate of speed right at the end of the straightaway, he slid through the grass and then slid through the pavement, and you know,
hmm
it's not going to be one of the hardest hits you'll see in the NASCAR Cup Series at
And
one of the slowest tracks.
you know what that reminded me of, that crash? It reminded me a lot of the Casey Kane Martin Truex crash from the 2011 Martinsville race. Both of them were
Oh
at the
yeah,
end of the straightaway there, and they both hit the wall really hard. And even then,
Like
Martinsville is known to be one of the
Truex
slower tracks.
lost brakes, I believe, in that wreck.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that context,
I'm
Cody.
pretty sure, yeah.
but
Yep.
still a longer straightaway, higher top speeds. And Derek, I want to give you a chance to speak on this as well. I think we saw Kevin Harvick point out earlier when Kyle Larson got hit from behind in the main event, how his head was still moving pretty aggressively, and he mentioned himself, Harvick did, that they're still working on this next gen car, and these hits
I think that
certainly
was
feel
Larson.
higher. Yeah, Larson. I'm talking about how Harvick mentioned it on the broadcast.
Yeah.
Uh, but Derek, I mean, I think it's clear that the next gen is still hitting pretty hard. Do you think that's kind of an issue still?
It's still going to be an issue with this entire generation of cars. I
Yeah.
do agree with Marcus, though, that they did make gradual improvements to making the car crumble more so that we don't have as many injuries. Like, I know, for example, Kurt Busch's career basically ended early because of
Hmm.
how rigid that car was,
Yeah.
I believe, in Pocono in practice. Uh, but yeah, whenever I saw that Burt Myers wreck, that was like uh, Cody. I was talking with Cody, and he said that it basically looked like a jump scare
Yeah.
whenever the camera panned to it.
We didn't see it live on Fox and a quarter mile track. They were missing some things. Luckily, we never had a situation where they just didn't have any camera angle of it, kind of like how Marcus's camera is moving around right now. But it's good enough that we could at least see the wreck happen. Curious if there's an in car on that, but who knows? I mean, we'll have to see later on if we can find some in-car on how his body reacted to the impact. Cody, before we switch gears to talking about the main event, any takeaways from that? A big incident right there.
Uh, no, I mean, uh, I don't know. I mean, these cars, these, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. These cars still got, I think, a little ways to go
Yep.
before they're fully. worked out. Um, I personally think that the Gen 7 was rushed. I still think we had a few years left for the Gen 6.
I don't think COVID helped it either.
I don't think, yeah, COVID definitely didn't help. So I personally, I think NASCAR jumped the gun just a little bit with these. And I still think they're still trying to find everything out. Obviously, every car's got its flaw, but it seems like this one's here had, for being called as safe as it is, it's had quite a bit of flaws in her. So I don't know. We'll just we'll see what the rest of the season uh shows. There's still a lot of racing, obviously, to go, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of crashes to go as well.
All right, let's shift gears now to focusing on our main event here, recapping that and giving our thoughts on the Cookout Clash Sunday night capper that happened just about 24 hours ago. By the way, if you're just joining us, we're recapping the Clash right now. I've got some exciting segments coming up, all mentioned in the description, and we've got some even more context that goes beyond what's in the description. You won't want to miss any of our show coming up. We got a lot of interactive segments as well. The chat if you've recently joined, just drop a hi in the chat. Love seeing everyone that's involved. We got a good crowd right now. And with that, let's get right into the main event, guys. And quite the main event. Lived up to a lot of things, but also looked like kind of what a main event NASCAR race would. 200 laps and not the craziness that you saw on the LCQ or heat number one. And certainly they all settled in pretty well there at the start, aside from a Kyle Busch spin. Sorry, Marcus. And obviously he didn't spin, he got spun. And but you know, it's for a track that seemed like it was gonna breed chaos. They settled in and they started racing for the good chunk of that first half of the race. And then what I really like, guys, is that we saw a pure battle for the lead coming to the halfway between Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott. Hamlin making different lines work, different entries, I should say. He was trying to make the pass work on the outside. Eventually got by Elliott and won the halfway. And I think Reddick got by Elliott as well. Elliott actually fell back to third. That might have been the furthest back he was all night. And so let's start with this general question. I'm curious what the chat thinks as well. Overall thoughts on the main event exclusively. I'll start with you, Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main event definitely was a lot cleaner than people thought we're gonna be.
Yeah.
Uh, 100%. But I was also very happy to see, later on in the race, you saw people running the outside around that track, which you
Mhm.
don't usually see that around Bowman Gray. There's usually not passing. So I think the fact that people like Ryan Blaney, like Denny Hamlin, were making the outside work in that race, it made the racing a lot better for sure. There just seemed to be a lot more respect on track than usually you would see on any sort of short track. So props to those guys. I mean, sure, we had our blunders here and there, but I mean, overall, absolutely great racing. At the end, lots of drama with Chase Elliott trying to fend off Ryan Blaney.
Mhm.
That was really fun to see. And overall, I think yesterday just proved a great result. Most of the fan base was happy as Chase Elliott, the most popular driver. He got to take home the victory from that race. Uh, Ryan Blaney did mention he didn't want to get chased out with pitchforks, so he had to sell for second. But
Yeah.
I just thought it was a great race.
Yeah, it certainly checked a lot of boxes, and I'll flip it to you, Derek. Kind of focusing on that battle for the lead. Late into these runs, and Marcus mentioned the multi-groove racing as well. It makes me want to bring up actually how we saw in the LCQ drivers instead of trying to choose cone in at the inside second spot in that third position, drivers would take the outside on those choose cone opportunities and they would make it work. They would be able to slot in. Ultimately, it's still a battle for the bottom, I'd say. Wouldn't you agree, though?
Yeah, I think obviously, yeah, you want to be on the inside. That's what I mean. Most racetracks are like that, with exceptions like Bristol. But
Mm.
yeah, like Marcus said, I mean the outside groove worked really well, and I just think that you know probably great multi groove racing, and I just thought the battle lead was also cool there at the end towards the halfway. Elliott was having a great performance. We'll get to that later, and you know, Hamlin coming in with 3 laps to go just kind of shocked me. And then Elliott fell back to third, like you said, with Reddick coming up to second. And I was just like, wow, well, this race just got interesting.
Absolutely. And Cody, we'll have to figure out how you manage the Chase Elliott fandom here, but you certainly spent a lot of that race with a smile on your face, and no rhyme intended, but Chase Elliott earned that pole, ran with it, then got challenged at the halfway point, found his way back into the lead. And so I guess I'd ask you from a Chase Elliott fan standpoint, how did you feel about focusing on that battle up front and the challenges that he had to face?
I for well, being a Chase Elliott fan here, last 2 years here, I've been a struggle to say the least ever since his snowboard accident. It's just not, it's just not been the same. And I've talked to a good amount of Chase Elliott fans before the season start, and we say that this is kind of the return. This is where we kind of get back on our feet and get back going. It was a really good race overall, in my opinion. I think, yeah, Chase Elliott probably had the most dominant car. I think the whole weekend he had the most dominant car. I do want to point this out too. I not, I did not really see a dominant manufacturer.
Mhm.
You had Fords like Busher and Kozlowski up there. You had Toyotas like Reddick and Hamlin, and then you had Chevrolet, and then you also had the Ford of Blaney, and then you had Chevrolets like Chase Elliott. They all really showed out. But from my perspective as a Chase Elliott fan, it was really fun to watch. I think those tires really came in the factory. You saw they're late. I think Chase was actually kind of smart. Obviously, halfway doesn't pay anything during this, or it's just a break. He probably knew that he had a strong enough car to get back up past those guys. So it was all right for him to get past, and he showed what he could. He uh he let it happen because he was able to get right back by him here after we went back racing. He led like 140 some laps, I think. It could be more than that. I honestly kind of forgot how many he led. But overall, it was a really good race in my opinion. The main event really showed out here, had a little bit of everything. I was also very surprised on how well the outside line was able to hold. I knew on research it was going to be something to watch, but I was very surprised on how well the outside was able to be worked in the middle of a green flag run, like Hamlin did on Chase Elliott.
I think the key is taking away the exit from the driver on the bottom. And it might be kind of a test too that you have some of the biggest, fattest cars that have ever raced at Bowman Gray in the modern era. But if you take away the exit of that driver on the inside, that's what really helps you make that outside work as well. I want to give kudos here and flowers to all the Ryan Blaney fans, if there's any in the chat right now, and because we talked about how he got in because of the points provision. All that means he started dead last. And if there's any question on if you couldn't pass easily at Bowman Gray, I want to say easily, but if passing was too hard, just ask Ryan Blaney, and he sliced his way through the field and almost won the dang thing. I mean, um, Cody, as a Chase Elliott fan, were you getting worried there seeing that 12 closing in?
No doubt. He got to our back bumper, but I think Blaney said in his interview he just used up too much. Chase Elliott was very conservative once he got the lead back. He was pretty smart about it. Lap traffic went. I was very surprised of how well lap traffic went. Larson gave Blaney a little bit of run for his money.
Yeah.
That's a teammate though, and Larson though he's not really known for being that dirty of a racer, so he was still pretty clean and all that. But yeah, I think a lot of Chase Elliott fans' butts were puckered there near the end because because Ryan Blaney was coming quick, and he had a really good car. He's probably gonna win a clash someday. I think if he doesn't start last, I think he has a good chance. But starting last in all these, especially the last couple of years, that has just not been his friend.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Tyler Sage in the chat brings up a good point, or at least a interesting talking point, I should say. He said he heard that the tire compound. I don't know if we had anyone that could fact check this. The tire compound that they use for this race is the same one they'll be using, uh, offering as an option, I should say, option tire at Phoenix,
Mm.
for the spring race. I think Marcus, you attend Phoenix. That probably is something especially
Yeah, I'll be
interesting to
there.
you.
I'll
So
be there.
NASCAR. while they're doing everything but refusing to add horsepower to these dang Gen 7s. They're trying to figure out how to better the short track racing, and my light just turned off. But the option tires, that could be something interesting. I'll flip it to you, Mark, especially if we see that at Phoenix.
Yeah, so I'm going there in March this year, so I think it'll definitely make the racing a lot more interesting. And as a race fan, I've been going to Phoenix for about 12 years now, and I'll say that last year the spring race, that was the first time I ever got bored during a race because
Hmm.
you just had no action up front. The only action you really got was Christopher Bell driving through the field to get to the front because he pinned her a yellow, but you didn't really have much to offer throughout the race, really. Same thing with the finale. The finale had a little more action, but overall, it just still wasn't that great of
Yeah.
a race like what you could usually get at Phoenix, especially what you see with the Xfinity cars. So I think, having the option tire, we saw it make Richmond, which typically fans were not a big fan of Richmond. It made people watch Richmond, and it was actually entertaining to them last year. So
Richmond.
it might
Well, I
might
mean,
help.
it was great seeing the Richmond night race. As crazy as that finish was, that was a early glimpse at what the option tire could prove. And I didn't mean to cut you off there, Marcus, but I will give
Yeah.
the floor now to Derek to speak on this matter. As someone who certainly tries to watch a lot of F1, I'm not saying NASCAR's trying to take an F1 approach to this, but adding the option tire and trying to figure out how to make short track racing more quote unquote exciting for the fans. And did you have any interesting thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty cool that they introduced that idea last year, Richmond, and they I think they are taking an F1 approach to NASCAR in a way because F1 is one of the only motorsports I believe that do that additional compounds, and um, I just think NASCAR is going in the right direction with the option tire. I don't think they should go to it just yet. They still have a lot of time to think about it and get the right options because I know Goodyear's always been stuck to one compound and they were really scared to branch out into that option tire, but it's actually held up very well for them.
Yeah, and we're heading towards our first break here, and hopefully our only break of the show to speak to that we're gonna run much more on schedule today. I want to flip the discussion here to one of the final talking points we'll have before we take a step back and look at the future of the Clash, and that's the performance of Chase Elliott. And when we last spoke, Cody, just a moment ago, you mentioned how Chase Elliott led probably at least 150 laps. Obviously, the most laps, a good majority, a healthy majority, but not all of them. But I do want to start with you. Chase Elliott winning after what you admitted yourself was not the best past couple of seasons for the 9 camp. What does his performance in the Clash tell you? Does it give you any added optimism for what could be the season?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that team, if everything's going right, I think it'll be hitting on all 8 cylinders. I think they'll be I want to say title contender. You know, if Chase Sillinger's had some pretty dominant performances in the past, and that race right there was no doubt a pretty dominant performance, in my opinion. So I think that it could be bad news here for other drivers if he can continue the way he's running.
Marcus, are you buying the Chase Elliott optimism from the Chase Elliott fan?
Yeah, I mean, Chase Elliott, I'd argue that he had a good year last year, super consistent, but that one win was ultimately the demise in the playoffs because winning in the regular season can mean a little bit with playoff points. So we saw it with Elliott at like Homestead, for example. He was quick all day there. Martinsville, he was quick all day there. So like an all right result at Vegas did not give him the Final Four spot they were hoping for. So I think going into this year, we'll see a lot more optimism from them. Chase Elliott going back to the Final Four because he did go on a 3-year run. So I think we will see a little bit more out of the 9 this year than we have seen compared to the 5 and the 24 and even the 48 last year.
Derek, I'm almost hoping you might want to push back on this notion that Chase Elliott, because he's won the Clash, will have a phenomenal year. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer to it, but I'm trying to get some conflict here. Are you buying the Chase Elliott optimism after he's won the opening event of 2025, albeit the Clash?
Although I'm not, I obviously with him winning this Clash, I think yeah, it's easy to say yeah he'll have a good season, but you gotta just take into account the entire season. Last couple of years, like Cody said, he admitted that Chase didn't have the greatest of years in his time in the Cup Series from his highs as the 2020 NASCAR Cup champion. But I just think that you can't be too optimistic just because he had a great first event. And by the way, he had a great first event at the
Yep.
Clash. I believe he got pole in that final practice,
Yep.
and you just knew he was going to have a great day from there on out.
Well, I want to ask the chat here. We've been having a fluctuated audience of around 10 people. Expectations for Chase Elliott, are they high? Are they still kind of Or are you just completely looking past what he did in the Clash, and it's not changing the fact that you perhaps think that he's not gonna have a season that Chase Elliott fans will be all too happy about? We'll have to see what happens. It's always funny that we ignite these conversations after an exhibition race, but Chase Elliott, to your point, Derek, blew the field away. Didn't lead all the laps, but led most of them, and deservingly so, got the win.
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely has a case for this season, just based on that performance alone. But like I said, you gotta wait for probably I want to say 4 to 6 races before you can judge.
Absolutely. I mean, the first two races are super speedway races on the schedule, so that's really hard to figure out who's contenders and who are pretenders and who
Hmm.
just has bad luck. We're heading towards our first break here, and before we get there, we do have some time to speak a little bit more on this matter. And you know, Bowman Gray certainly gave NASCAR fans the much needed welcome back to racing that they all desired from that off season that started in November and has taken us all the way to beginning of February, and it's gotten us quite excited. We do have to wait 2 weeks though before we get to Daytona for the 500, the official season opener. As I check on our timer right here, I want to open up the discussion here and to the chat as well. Uh, what is in store, or not that. I want to dial it back and look at the speed weeks, or should I say speed days of Daytona. Are you happy with the current state of how NASCAR builds up to the Great American Race? I'll start with you, Marcus.
Yeah, no, I'm not really, because I mean, all you really get from the Daytona 500 advertisement, you just see Joey Logano, and then they pan to a car of 500 moments. And I just think, like, first off, they don't introduce who Joey Logano is in the commercial. And
Mhm.
second off, like, the casual viewer is not going to know the significance of the moments that they're advertising from that race. So I think, definitely get a different provider to advertise the Daytona 500, to stream the Daytona 500 compared to Fox. And overall, I mean, I think NASCAR just needs to do something to bring back the excitement that you used to have for Daytona Speed Weeks. Bring back, like, if we go away from Bowman Gray, bring back the Clash and do something like the Daytona backstretch. You've got all that room on the front stretch right outside turn 4, or even right outside turn 1, where you can kind of make a Daytona backstretch type track there. So bring the excitement back, make something cool out of Daytona again, just like lead up to the 500.
And the reason I bring it up is because this can kind of segue into our next segment before we take a break here. Derek, if you could go a bit quickly here, do you like the current state of how NASCAR builds up to Daytona?
It's not as cool as it used to be. I know I sound like a bit too nostalgic here, but I just think that
I agree.
overall the commercials, and like I believe NASCAR Race Day was also great at that back in the early 2010s. And I just think that yeah, like Marcus said, Joey Logano just keeps showing up with his Coca-Cola bottle and just putting it down our throats
Mhm.
basically.
Cody, is it false advertising if they are still promoting it as Speed Weeks, even though everything happens less than a week leading up to race day at the Daytona 500?
I kind of have a lot to say about this, but I'll try to make it quick here. I I loved growing up. Saturday, Sunday, the week before the 500 was the Clash, the shootout. Then qualifying Thursday during the day was from the duels. You'd usually come home sick that day from school. Um, and you'd watch the duels. Friday was trucks. Saturday was the bush race or the Xfinity race, and Sunday was the Cup race. You also had Arca on that Saturday before too. But um, I don't know. I mean, there's just it's just not the same from a fan perspective. I think it does help a little bit, and I think we can attest to this as we are trying to make a trip to the 500. It does kind of get everything more accessible, because now it's just 5 days instead of a week and 2 days or whatever it was. So I see it from that perspective, but I don't know. I think there was just so much prestige in that, and the long-standing tradition of doing all that. So, eh, I don't know.
Well, like I said, this was going to segue into our final segment before break here. We're going to make this very quick and really don't even have to elaborate too much. I want to ask the chat this as well. We see how the Clash kind of is a prelude to Speed Weeks that, or lack thereof, being 2 weeks ahead. What is your future outlook for an ideal usage of the Clash race, though? And I'll actually start with you, Derek. How do you want the Clash to be used going forward? Do you want to stay at Bowman Gray, or any variation of that?
I mean, I'll keep it quick, but I do believe that they should switch it up every once in a while. I mean, maybe Bowman Gray another year or two, and then I think personally I would like to see New Smyrna because 20 minutes from Daytona it would be a very easy transition for those Cup drivers just down the street, taking Tomoka Farms Road.
How about you, Cody? Quickly.
Yeah, I think what Derek had a while ago was the backstretch idea. That is actually a pretty good idea. You can make it almost like Bowman Gray, um, tight track, quarter mile, maybe just a little bit bigger. I think there's a lot of potential there, but I don't know. The future will tell.
And Marcus, what would you like to
Mhm.
see from the Clash?
Keep going the short tracks. Go to as many short tracks across the country as you can. Get these different markets. See what works. See what doesn't work. Go into the Midwest. We don't have many places there. Go into the Northwest United States. You've got some cool tracks up there. You've got Evergreen up there that you could use. NASCAR needs to expand their market more because they just went to LA, which they had the Fontana market. They go to Bowman Gray, which has the whole North Carolina market of it. So just expand your market. See what works. See what doesn't.
And
One
we will see what works. We're going to take a quick break. We'll continue this discussion on the other side of the break. And we're back. Here, boy, that was one of the quickest breaks we will ever have. We'll see if we can beat that personal best next show. And you won't want to miss episode 3, to where we preview not just the Daytona 500 ahead, but the entire NASCAR season ahead. And we want everyone to be there for it. We want to hear everyone's predictions, bowl predictions, who's your champion, who makes the playoffs, and who might win a race for the first time, all that type of stuff. You won't want to miss episode 3, same time next week here, right on this same YouTube channel, 8 p.m. Monday night. It's 8 p.m. Eastern. I do want to give a chance to finish up on this conversation because running the high banks mentioned a bit earlier in the chat on how we would feel if the Clash went to Brazil, and I do want to start this off by saying I don't know why it would be. I mean, NASCAR needs to stop pretending that they're trying to save on a budget and let these drivers get the practice they deserve before they ship them overseas with that so-called budget they're trying to save. And I'll start with you, Derek, on if you want NASCAR to go international, maybe Brazil for the Clash.
I do agree. I think we should go to Mexico, like we are this year. I think this is a great move. Going to Europe might be a different story because it's definitely a bit longer of a trip, but at the same time, definitely possible. But in terms of Brazil, though, I just don't know too much about Brazil, and it just would be a new face basically for all NASCAR fans, and everyone just have to get used to Brazil basically. I mean, the only thing I know from Brazil is the Sao Paulo track from F1,
Mhm.
so it would be a lot of learning experience.
Cody, are you team international for NASCAR in the near future?
I think we should have gone the opposite. I think we should have gone the other direction. They have a beautiful circuit up in Montreal. Everybody knows that place.
Mhm.
They even got a good place. In Bowmanville. They're a
Canadian
Canadian
Motorsports
tire.
Tire Park.
Yes, yes.
For the people that don't know the slang,
So
perhaps.
yeah, so I don't know. I am excited to see what Mexico City does can produce. But as for a clash or something, no, I think that should stay here. I think that should no doubt be a short track in the States. And I think that'll probably be hopefully where it will stay.
I, I don't know. Did I say Canadian Motorsports Tire or Canadian
You said
Tire?
Canadian Motorsport Tire Park.
It's Canadian Tire.
It is a very convoluted name.
So that's why Cody said Bowmanville, the legal name of the track. And Marcus, I'll give you a chance to answer the
Yeah.
question at hand right now. International, are you on board with it? Does NASCAR need to go international to keep up with the times?
I think if NASCAR does, they need to go to a place where they can possibly get a crowd that actually will enjoy NASCAR. You know, the two places that come to mind are number one, Japan. We've seen NASCAR go there for Suzuka, and we've seen NASCAR go there for I think there was another track they went to. Uh, Twin Ring Motegi.
Twin Ring Motegi.
Yes, another tongue twister. And then the other place I think of is Australia because they do have an oval track there. I believe it's called Thunder Valley or something like that, or the Thunderdome.
Yeah,
Uh,
something like that.
yeah, so NASCAR has gone to Australia before, and there is a market for it there. I mean, you've seen Australian drivers like Daniel Ricciardo be big fans of NASCAR
Yep.
all the way over there. So go either to an oval they have over in Australia. You've got Shane Van Gisbergen that you can capitalize off of now, or even go somewhere like Montreal, or I mean not Montreal, Melbourne or Bathurst, somewhere with NASCAR. That would be interesting to see.
Let's flip gears here. Almost done talking the Clash, and before we completely flip off of the Clash, I promised that we would go back, watch the tape, review our race picks for the Clash on episode 1, and I want to ask the chat as well. Without bluffing, did you make a good prediction ahead of time? Did you think a driver would win, and that driver ended up winning? I'm curious to hear what everyone thought. Looking at our picks, we should take a look here and start with none other than Cody Sill, who picked Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, and an underdog of Burt Meyer. I also picked Ryan Blaney, and my other winner pick was Austin Cindric. My underdog was Riley Herbst. Derek picked Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and an underdog Eric Jones. And Marcus picked Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, underdog Austin Dillon. Three of us had Ryan Blaney and he finished second. And most of us, our underdog, did not make the main event. Actually, all of us did not see our underdog pick make the main event. I'm looking here, and I'm curious what people think. If we were doing maybe say a dunk contest rating, who would you give the best lineup to based on how they performed there in the Clash? Cody certainly had two top five drivers, I think, right, with Logano and Blaney. That's a hard average to beat. And myself did not do too well outside of picking Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric.
Cindric got like 7th, I thought, didn't he?
A quiet day.
Mm.
Not
Still did
enough
something.
to beat Cody's line. And then Derek, who picked a driver that led laps, Denny Hamlin, and Christopher Bell, who also had kind of one of those quiet days.
Similar to Cindric, he
Yeah.
finished upper top
Bell,
10.
Bell had that run in with Hocevar though.
And
Yeah,
then,
that too.
yeah, Marcus picking Ryan Blaney is good, but him also picking Kyle Busch kind of
Oh,
hurt his average. So I think the upper hand is probably Cody Silv for our first ever race picks, thanks to that average between Logano and Blaney.
I want to ask Cody, why did you not pick Elliott this time around? Your favorite driver?
I didn't like what he had shown at the Coliseum, and I figured the racing was going to be a lot like the Coliseum. Both Blaney and Logano showed a lot of promise at the Coliseum. So,
Hmm. Well,
um,
yeah, I
yeah.
get that, but I just saw Marcus's pick with Kyle Busch. I was like, why
Yeah,
didn't you do
I
that?
don't know. I'm gonna try not to be as biased.
Yeah.
Chase Elliott is a very all-around well driver.
Mm.
He's good at a lot of different types of tracks, road courses, super speedways, intermediates, short tracks. So, I mean, throughout the season, um, I don't know. I will ask Zach, can we kind of segue this into the fantasy idea?
I think we can, and as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that. Let's skip ahead here, just temporarily, and open up the discussion to our chat, NASCAR Fantasy. And if we started one on this channel for the show, all of us regular panelists participated, we'd like to make it public as well. And we'd be curious if anyone would be interested in participating in that as well. I know we uh, don't have as much viewers right now as we did just a little bit ago. I'll try to get that out on a social media post as well, the YouTube post, I should say, so we can try to get it. I'll make it a poll, I think. But NASCAR Fantasy, I think it'd be fun, if anything, if we do it, guys. I mean, even if we don't make it public, but I'd like to make it public. Let the fans get involved. That'd probably be very exciting. And are we on board with that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would
we've
be.
done it before.
I think we'll have to make it happen then, and we'll have time to get that set up ahead of Daytona. Uh, Got to make sure we find the right platform for that. I don't know how different it is from like 2018 when we tried the fantasy on like I think it was draft picks.
I think last time I played it was 2021, so I
I've
don't
played
think
it.
it was that long ago.
I've played it a bit recently. I did it last year, and I think I had a pretty good year. In almost every fantasy league I did, I got in the top 5.
All right, well that's insightful then, and I would have to imagine that we'd probably get a good vote on when I send out the YouTube post if people want to participate in our fantasy league. Certainly more than just us panelists. All right, well that's good to know, and we can check that off there, Cody. Glad we segued that. Let's talk here for a moment about the return of Rockingham, and for the first time I can finally change this graphic to another title. Rockingham Returns, and indeed it did. In a big way. They opened up that turn 4 grandstand, guys, and people on a Monday morning drove out and wanted to witness the open test with their own eyes. We saw Casey Kane get in the Xfinity car there, and just what a time it was to see NASCAR cars back on Rockingham in an official test. How about I start with you, Marcus? I know you were
Hmm.
watching it closely.
Yes, I mean last week I got the results up right
Yeah.
here. So the top 10 in that test session, Ryan Sieg went fastest, which I think that team, that 39 team, they've gotten faster and faster since
Mhm.
about 2020. So I think this year's the year he finally gets a win.
I've been waiting
Second
for
place,
that a long time.
yeah, I think everyone's been waiting for that. And the guy that denied him a win last year, Sam Mayer, he got second, his first outing with the Haas factory team this year. Third place was Taylor Gray in the 54 car. He wasn't actually that bad this practice session, which was good to see out of him. Casey Kane, first time he's been in a stock car since 2017, or in 2018, I mean. It's now 2025, and he's out here running fourth, beating a lot of these younger guys. You got Parker Retzloff, first time at Alpha Prime, he's fifth. Brendan Poole sixth, with Allgaier seventh, Sawalish eighth. Jeb Burton got ninth, and then Ryan Ellis, out of all people, got 10th in that session. So I think there's a lot of big surprises there. Maybe the bigger teams didn't bring their best that they could have brought to the test. Maybe this is something telling of what we could see out of these guys come Rockingham time. Also got the truck results here if anybody's curious about that. Ty Majeski was the fastest in the session. Caden Honeycutt in the 45 for Nice Motorsports. He got second in the session with Wayne Riggs in third. Note when he did do this practice session, he was still the 38 car. Has since been moved to the 34 though. Or wait, yeah, he's since been moved to
Yeah,
the
that's
34.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So then fourth was Matt Mills for Nice Motorsports. Corey Heim got fifth in his test. I think we expect to see a lot out of him. Jake Garcia got sixth, with Raja Caruth in seventh. Gio Ruggiero getting eighth place. Tanner Gray got ninth, and Sammy Smith in the 07 truck got 10th.
All right, that's good that we have you run that down. And Cody, I want to ask you, they sure looked fast, and that's because they were fast. The Xfinity cars are ripping it. Same can be said for the trucks, and we saw drivers overstepping the boundary a little bit. What did you learn from seeing the social media posts revolving around the test?
Um, I really enjoyed seeing the Rockingham back. I've always been a big supporter of Rockingham. Always have loved Rockingham. Um, and I think it's a good market. I think it's a track that honestly, and I think if you ask NASCAR officials, this is basically a test run, to see how well Rockingham does with Xfinity trucks, and depending on how well they do, will determine whether we get a Cup date within the next couple years. Um, I would suspect within 2 years we'll see Cup cars back at the track at Rockingham. That's just my prediction.
Do you think they have to put more investment into the facility? The only grandstands that are up left are the front stretch ones.
Maybe. You see something like what Nashville does. Nashville brings in those temporary grandstands, which have almost become permanent temporary, which is I don't know. It's kind of weird how they have it there. Maybe that could be something. Obviously Rockingham had a very for a while there. There was even talks about it being tore down and everything. So luckily we avoided that. But um, yeah, I think there's going to be some renovations that's going to need to be made. Um, hopefully it's not a disaster like Kentucky um many years ago that we saw, but I think Rockingham's got a bright future ahead of them.
Derek, how would you approach this first test on a track that hasn't graced the surface of NASCAR Goodyear tires since the Truck Series was last there in about 2013? And I mean, how amped would you be if you were one of those drivers that had got invited to the test?
Um, yeah, I'd be pretty excited if I was invited to this Rockingham test. Like we said, very long time since we ran here, and we need to make sure we get enough seating as well for
Yeah.
the Rockingham if we do get a cup race in the future. And just the thought of that just made me a little excited, and I thought, uh, Rockingham, Rockingham's just a good track overall. I know I said last episode, I was really excited to see it come back.
I love unique tracks, and that's why I love Pocono having a place on the schedule. It's not a cookie cutter track. Rockingham is as unique as an oval as it gets. You will not find an oval NASCAR that emulates Rockingham at all. I mean, it's so unique, the banking so steep, and I would expect multi-groove racing when it comes down to it, or at least like we saw back when Rockingham raced there, a track that favors not only running the high side, but diamonding the quarter. All questions that we'll have to answer.
Yeah, I also thought, that front stretch is also very unique. I'd never seen anything like it where, you can maybe cut it just a tiny bit going past that start finish line.
Yeah, the interesting thing though is that back when they raced there, the drivers usually like to run the front stretch up by the wall, even though it's doglegging a little bit. It's always just another oddity to how Rockingham runs. We'll be looking forward to that, and for good reason. Let's flip here to one of our other upcoming segments. I say upcoming because how about we highlight some of the NASCAR Up and Comers and getting a good look at some of the new ones in the Cup Series as well, like Shane Van Gisbergen. And I want to flip this back to Marcus here, who's good at giving us all the insight on who to look out for in new places or new faces, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this year we do have a pretty good amount of new faces and new places, a lot of which actually come from the Stuart Haas closure that just took place. You got a lot of guys like Josh Berry. He's now at the Wood Brothers. He showed a little bit of what he could do in the LCQ yesterday, getting into the Clash. You got people like Noah Gregson at front row. Uh, Trying to think off the top of my head. No, I mean Cole Custer. I don't know if it's really a new team. I mean, the only difference I think at Haas is that it's gonna have factory support from RFK. But other than that, I think a lot of the personnel in the 41 team is about the same as it was last year. But SVG, man, first time they're running 3 full-time cars at Trackhouse, getting one of the SHR charters. I think we're gonna see a lot of decent stuff out of SVG this year. We saw him, it took him a bit to adapt to the Xfinity car, but I think one of the races that I was really looking at last year of his was, if we look at ovals, Darlington, they did not have an Xfinity practice because I believe of a rainout. So you saw SVG have to adapt, have to learn how to drive Darlington for the first time, and he did it. And he got, I believe, got a top 10, top 15. Look for him to adapt this year. Look for Riley Herbst as well. I believe he did show it takes a little time for Riley to adapt, but
Mm-hmm.
once he gets good at a car, he gets good at a car, like we saw in the Xfinity Series at Phoenix last year.
He sure has come around, hasn't he? And it's one of the big stories of drivers that continue to get opportunities. Actually, I want to kind of open up one of our questions here, and I want the chat, those of you listening, to get involved. How about we make some Rookie of the Year predictions for all the top 3 series, starting at the bottom with the trucks. And Cody, still, I know it's always tough to keep up with the rookies coming into the truck series, but Marcus can help you out. I can help you out as well. There are some notable names. Anyone stand out for Rookie of the Year, perhaps?
Yeah, and this one might be kind of out of the left field, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what Frankie Muniz can do for Ray Hume. I really liked his performance in the ARCA. He had glimmers of hope. I think he's still getting used to this whole racing thing. I don't think he'll be Malcolm in the middle of the pack anymore.
Uh,
But I think that he's just got a lot to go there. That Connor Mozek's another one for the truck series, I would say.
Mm.
Are we doing all 3 series right here?
well, let's just stick with the truck series.
Okay.
Would you
So
like
yeah,
me to read off the Rookie of the Year contenders for all the series when we get to them,
Yeah,
Zach?
yeah, sure.
Okay, so for the trucks, we do have Tony Breidinger, Gio Ruggiero, Andres Perez. You got Connor Mozak, Christian Rose, and Frankie Muniz. Those are all of your truck series Rookie of the Year contenders.
And I'll let you answer this, Derek. Any notables and Rookie of the Year predictions you have for the truck series?
Well, I mean, I obviously want to bring up Tony Brendinger. I know one of the people we work with behind the scenes, Antonio Dawson, big fan of her work. Same name as well, Tony. But I just think that coming from Arca series, it shows that she's gonna make her way up. I hope, though, I do have concerns because the past couple women that have came to NASCAR obviously fizzled out. Natalie Decker, Haley Deegan, and we just hope one day that we can have a Danica Patrick type of talent make the Cup Series.
Yeah, that's up for debate, though, if Danica Patrick deserved the hype she had around her. That's a
Yeah.
conversation for another day. I will say Tony Breidinger certainly did not get rushed as some of those other females maybe did through the ranks. Spent her time in ARCA, at least my opinion. I don't think she got rushed, and now she has a ride here in trucks. And while I'm on the topic, I wouldn't be opposed to predicting that Tony Breidinger would win Rookie of the Year. I think it's a very possible outcome considering the other candidates she's going up against. Connor Mosack will make noise. I'm not saying might
Oh yeah.
make noise. I think he will make noise. Same can be said for Muniz. And Marcus, did you make a formal prediction for
I
Truck
didn't
Rookie?
make one yet. I just read them all off. I'm looking at someone you guys haven't looked at him. Andres Perez was I believe he was the ARCA champion last year.
He was.
Yeah, moved up to the truck. Yeah, he's getting moved up to the truck series now, racing for Spire Motorsports. He'll be teammates with Rajat Karuth and whoever the other two drivers running part time are each week. So I think look out for him. He might take a little time to adjust. We don't know. We never truly know with this truck series until a few races in what's going to happen. But Andres Perez, that's definitely a guy you want to look out. You know, driver from Mexico. Might come time whenever he moves up to Xfinity or eventually Cup if Mexico City's still around.
And I'll leave it right with you, Marcus. How about you read us off the Rookie of the Year contenders in Xfinity?
Yeah, so this year you've got Carson Kvapil, who's racing for JRM. Got Connor Zilich, who's also racing for JRM. William Sawalich, who's racing for Joe Gibbs, as well as Taylor Gray. Christian Eckes and Daniel Dye will be at Colleague this year. Nick Sanchez replaced Parker Kligerman in the number 48, and then you got Dean Thompson. And when I look at those guys, Connor Zilich, that's the biggest name I think everyone's gonna be watching him, seeing what he can do. Guy just came out of the park swinging for his first ever Xfinity race. Pulled away from an entire pack of cars in the span of a lap. So I think it'll be awesome to see what that guy can do full time. I'm also looking at Taylor Gray. I mean, in the truck series, he was always quiet, but he could always knock out results anytime, any place. Almost won a IRP race that one time until he got taken out a couple laps ago.
Mark is in the chat having his input on this discussion, and I'll flip it up to you, Cody. Xfinity Rookie of the Year prediction.
Yeah, I think I gotta agree. Connor Zilich here. If he continues the run he's on, he's gonna be in the Cup Series in a few years. I'd even go as far as saying that the JRM program, Cup program right now is being built for him. Um, you got other guys like Carson Kvapil. He's been pretty good. Um, he's shown signs. Nick Sanchez, he's filling in big shoes. Kligerman almost got that win at the Roval. That 48 big machine racing car. That has shown a lot of speed at different times. Can it show? That's really going to be the car that I think is going to show. Was it just coincidence, or was it the driver? Was that the driver different there? Dean Thompson, another guy. A lot of truck drivers here. A big group of truck drivers moving to the Xfinity Series. I think this year, the Xfinity Series is going to have a good race for the um, Rookie of the Year. But I think Connor Zilich is not only going to race for a Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to run for a championship. So that probably my pick. I think a dark horse in this is going to be Eckes. Eckes has shown a lot of improvement, no doubt, in the last couple years. So I wouldn't count him out either.
Absolutely. And Derek, I mean, I think it's a very stacked rookie field in Xfinity. Who are you picking?
Oh yeah, I mean, I honestly have 5 total Rookie of the Year candidates that I could maybe choose from. That would be Dye Eckes, Kvapil, Sanchez, and Zilich. And I think the easy answer here is Zilich. We saw him in the Rolex 24. I think he won his class actually. But anyways,
He
he
did.
did pretty good even for yeah, he did pretty good for his, uh, believe his first or second time. But anyways, on terms of the Xfinity series, I mean, he's a generational talent. Like you haven't seen a prospect like him in a little bit. So I just think he'll easily get this Rookie of the Year uh, award. And
Mhm.
if I had to pick a dark horse, I'd probably pick Nick Sanchez. I've just followed him a lot from the Truck Series. He spent 2 years in the Truck Series. and he's just been slowly, gradually improving his craft, and I think he's a dark horse for the Rookie of the Year.
Really quickly, I do want to point out you didn't pick Gray or Eckes, but you did pick Daniel Dye. Is there something you see in Daniel Dye that you don't see in the other two coming into this year?
His hair.
Okay.
I love his hair. It's just a great personality, but I haven't seen too many interviews with him though, so maybe he's a boring person. I'm not sure.
I don't think personality matters when it comes to the racetrack, though.
Yeah, you know,
It's
maybe.
whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Chase Elliott might attest to that. Um, Guys, do you remember when Ty Gibbs came onto the scene and he before he had a lot of haters, he stormed into NASCAR and just was winning more races than he was losing, literally, when he came up through ARCA and then was running in the Xfinity. Half the time his car was black, nothing on it, blank, and he was still winning races. To me, that's kind of what the vibe I get out of Connor Zilic, except Connor Zilic is more well-rounded, racing in all these different disciplines, racing all the time, as a matter of fact. I don't know, this kid's so young and has just such a busy schedule. And I don't know how you're going to compete with Connor Zilic for Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to win it. I do think Carson Quatful stands out to me running in the same equipment, same team at Junior Motorsports, and that could be an exciting battle. Maybe they'll become good track buddies, though. We'll have to see what happens in the Xfinity Series. Let's shift gears, though, as I take a look at the chat. Mark and Tyler very adamant in this conversation. I do want to point out to Cole Chandler, one of our most adamant chatters, one of our best members of the audience. We'll definitely try to get to some of the great questions he's bringing up, at least at the end of the show, if not sooner. Well, as that just means we have one more Rookie of the Year prediction to make. It's for the Cup Series, and it's a field that's, Marcus, is it correct, only has two contenders that are eligible?
Yep, only Shane Van Gisbergen and Riley Herbst. And I think, I've pointed this out in the last episode. A lot of people like to say that Shane Van Gisbergen has an easy Rookie of the Year locked up. But a lot of people said that about Noah Gragson in 2023. And obviously, we saw how well that went. So I think Riley Herbst can stand a chance this year. Obviously, he's had some races where he raced in the Cup car last year. He raced for Rick Ware a little bit, as well as front row at times. So I think now that he's in a 2311 car, we'll see what he can actually do with that car. 2311 is not bad equipment to start out in. So is Riley Herbst going to prove, that he's going to belong in the Cup Series, or is he going to just prove to be a filler year for someone potentially more favored by Toyota?
Well, Cody, I'll flip it to you. Amongst the two eligible, who is better?
I think it's just gonna take Riley too long to really adapt to the Cup car. I will say he showed a lot of promise. I don't even think it was last. I think it was the year before last at the Dega Fall.
Mm-hmm.
We were there.
Ran that white
Uh,
and white base Monster Energy scheme, right?
Yeah, it's a
Yep.
very, very good run for him, and I think he was up front most of the race until getting caught up in a wreck late. A lot of Cup drivers post race talked very highly about how his racing was, being so inexperienced here in the Cup Series at super speedways, and honestly, super speedway racing in general. Uh, but I think this is going to come down to who's going to perform more and probably even get more likely to get a win. And I think Ben Gisbergen is definitely going to win one of the road courses. Um, though it's kind of just saying that just because he's good at road courses, but he's shown that he's always a contender at the road courses so far, no matter either Xfinity or Cup. So I think um, I think Van Gisbergen's got this one not on lock, but he's probably a pretty high probability that he'll get the Rookie of the Year.
Riley Herbst is going to mess around and win the Daytona 500 or something if you overlook him too much
Yeah.
now. So,
I
but
owe you $20 if that happens.
all right.
Oh,
Oh well,
Oh,
Derek, as someone who appreciates a racer with savvy road course talent, Shane Van Gisbergen checks all those boxes. But is it enough for you to easily win Rookie of the Year?
he sure does, but I believe personally that the battle between Riley Herbst and Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be a 50-50 battle, and
Really?
maybe going 5% better or lower, because I believe that Shane Van Gisbergen's potential in the Cup Series has very reminiscent ways of like someone like Juan Pablo Montoya, a guy who came from F1, was successful there, and Van Gisbergen's from the supercars, and coming over the Cup Series is just a different style of racing. And although he did win that his first race, which hasn't been done since I believe the 50s, that was a great feat. But again, that was a road course, and when you got a schedule of about 30 rounds of ovals, it's just going to be a lot harder for Van Gisbergen to get to that page. But I think, but in terms of Riley Herbst, I also don't think he has a huge boom potential in the Cup Series. I think that he'll be a solid driver and probably get Rookie of the Year, maybe more than Jane Van Gisbergen, but I just don't see the boom potential there.
For me, Shane Van Gisbergen draws all the comparisons to Montoya, like you said, but also Ambrose and Allmendinger. And I don't want to say he's exactly like all those drivers, but certainly seems like a driver that if he's going to win, I'd bet my bottom dollar it'd be on a road course, because it's not just the fact that the road courses are his best track, it's the fact that the road courses are far and away where he's got to be a favorite going in no matter what the track is, as long as it has left and right turns. SVG, you put him in any vehicle and he'll be competing, and that's just a test to where he's coming from in the ranks of motorsports. With that being said, Riley Herbst does not have the capability in my eyes to make it as competitive. Just from the standpoint of SVG, will probably win a road course, I think, and if not more than one. But he's also shown some really good maturity. One maturity that I think's been overlooked on the ovals. SVG went out and got a top 10 right at the Clash, and I think he's going to be quietly consistent at the ovals, not probably making consistent noise up front, but consistently running good as long as he can control it. So SVG, definitely my rookie of the year in the Cup Series. And as we'll move off our NASCAR Up and Comers segment right here, Mark in the chat continuing to add some thoughts to this conversation, and we'll have to get to that later on if we can't get to it earlier, we'll definitely get to it in our chat room open discussion at the end. We've got a show almost wrapped up here, and we got some couple segments here to run through quickly. Let's start actually with Cody, and Marcus as well can chime in. I want to give you, Cody, the chance to add your 2 cents on what's happening, not on the surface of asphalt racing, but the surface of dirt.
Yeah, so actually I took a thing here, and from the 4th to the 8th, here's what you have going on. Some of these are going on the same time. Lucas Oil late models are starting off at Ocala, 4th and the 5th and the 6th. You've also got the NOS Energy Sprint cars, World of Outlaws. They're starting at Volusia as well. All Tech is going to have the Super Series. UCS or USCS is going to be at Hendrick County. And this is just this is just in 4 days. I mean, we have 1, 2, 3. That's about 15 different events going on in just 4 days.
Which one are you most excited for?
Um, Lucas Oil late models have really been kicking in high gear. They just got done with 2 days at Alltech, had great racing, had a great finish both nights, a lot of action. So them going to Ocala. Ocala's a very unique racetrack. So I think that could be very interesting. Also, following this, the USAC sprint cars will start up their season, and that'll also be at Ocala. They'll also head out to Volusia. I do believe they start the 9th with practice at Ocala, then 2 days at Volusia, then come back, and I think they're racing about 5 days at Ocala. I'm not sure on that, but yeah. So this is the Winter Nationals, Gator Nationals. These are the early months. Back in the day, you used to be able to see a lot of Cup drivers, or not really a lot, but you guys get guys like JJ Yaley or Tony Stewart, Dave Blaney, they'd come out to Volusia because they would usually around about the same time that Daytona would be, and you get to see them race all different types of cars. I know Tony Stewart's won many events in sprint cars, modifieds there at Volusia. So excited to see what is coming up. It's going to be a very busy if you're in the dirt racing universe because it's starting to really kick gears, kick
A,
in
l-
gear.
a lot to be excited for, Marcus. Is there anything thing you want to add to the conversation while we're on this topic?
Yeah, well, it's gonna still be dirt, but it's
Yeah,
actually gonna be Supercross
yeah,
here.
it's still dirt.
Yep. So, this week we had I believe it was the Glendale Triple Crown. Jordan Smith got his first win at that event. Chase Sexton won in the 450s, and he retained the points lead going into the beginning of their East Coast swing at Raymond Jones Stadium. You had Julian Balmer, who had who still holds the points championship in his division after multiple issues during his Triple Crown races. Uh, that's basically everything for there. We uh, go down to Kern County here in Bakersfield. They've knocked down the walls on the backstretch, and they knocked down turn 1 and 2 because they plan to reshape the track in a way. It'll be interesting to see what Kern County's like when it comes time for. We'll see what it comes down to when it comes time for K&N to go there next week. Tanner Holmes announced his 2025 schedule with races that includes races in the 18T, as well as the Tarleton 21. They headlined races with High Limit, World of Outlaws, and the Narc King of the West 410s, which I believe Narc is where we see Dominic Gordon, right, Cody?
Yes.
Yep. So we'll see Dominic Gordon. We interviewed him on the first episode. If you want to see that, go watch that. It'll be interesting to see what Tanner Holmes can do against him.
And a lot, like I said, to be excited for. The racing season will just continue to amp up. We'll have F1 starting, we'll have IndyCar starting. But if you're a American motorsports fan in particular, you've got a lot going on already on the dirt scene, whether it's two wheels or four wheels racing on it. We're glad Marcus and Cody could add some context on that. Curious, we're seeing what excitement people have shared in the chat amongst those dirt events coming up. Speaking of other events outside of NASCAR, there's a lot going on in the sports world beyond wheels, and that is none other than the most talked about event of the year in sports, and that's the Super Bowl. Curious to hear who all has something to say about who they're picking for the Super Bowl. I especially want the chat to get involved in this. And, well, it's the Chiefs or the Eagles. Not a popular matchup amongst a lot of people unless you're a fan of those teams. And, well, I'd like to start. And yes, I'm in that group of I wish both teams could lose. That being said, I don't know how incriminating this is, but behind my head you see two Cowboys jerseys. And I would love to see anything but the Eagles win the Super Bowl. So hoping for the Chiefs three-peat. Don't like saying that, but that's kind of what I have to root for. Derek, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I'm from Pittsburgh, so whenever I think of Eastern PA, it's like, the Eagles are always just like in the back of my mind as like, oh, the Philly city. I can't believe that Pittsburgh's better, but uh and then there's also a side for Kansas City. I mean, if you guys saw the AFC Championship game, the Buffalo Josh Allen was pretty much got that first down, but it ended up being a turnover on downs for Kansas City, and I could not believe that. I was very mad. I wish the Buffalo Bills would have gotten to that Super Bowl finally. But so Kansas City Chiefs again, and you know, I really it's really hard to pick one here, but I'm just gonna go with the Chiefs. Hope they get a three-peat. Haven't seen that in a while, so just not very confident in that.
Cody, I know you've been trying to study and look into how you can learn from the black magic that's on display from the Patrick Mahomes Camp and Company and try to utilize it in your everyday life. I'm curious if that means you're going to be rooting for the Chiefs or not.
Yeah, I haven't found any luck with that yet. Um, which kind of sucks. But nevertheless, I think I guess I'll go for the Chiefs. The only reason for that is the history. I always like history being made, and being able to witness it. So that's my biggest takeaway from that. I don't really have much to say for the Super Bowl. Um, yeah,
Well, Marcus, are you even going to be watching the Super Bowl?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a Washington fan here, and I really hope that the Eagles bring out the body bag game for the Chiefs this week.
Hmm.
If you don't know what that reference is, go look it up. It was Eagles versus Washington before, back in the late '80s, I believe it was. So
That was
yeah,
that was, that was a
I'm
very
hoping
gruesome
for the
game.
Eagles. Please let the Eagles win. Saquon Barkley, please save us. That's what I'm going for this week.
And Mark and Cole Chandler in the chat, both riding the Eagles train. Well, that
3-3.
wraps up that thought right there, and a lot of mixed choices here. And I mean, the bottom line is, as far as I know, we don't have anyone watching. If we do, that is a fan of either teams. I'd like to know if that's the case. Certainly not on the panel here. And like I said, the bottom line is that most people wish the Super Bowl matchup was between other teams, but we get what we get this year. A lot of people say they won't be watching it. That is yet to be determined. People might say that and they'll still watch it. Uh,
Yeah, I doubt that.
yeah,
I'm
It's a
going.
very important game.
yeah. Well, we'll have to see what the halftime show has in store. The commercials as well. It's always a big event down there in New Orleans. Um, it's hard to get excited this year. I don't say that a lot, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, we'll
Yeah, I'm
flip
going for the
segments
Super Bowl
here.
party. I'm excited.
We are almost to the end of the show, and we did have a hot sports topic we want to touch on here, and a nuclear trade that you probably saw the news of, even if you don't care a lick about professional basketball, and that is uh, the Dallas Mavericks, face of the franchise, Luka Doncic, getting dealt late into the night when a lot of people were asleep to the Los Angeles Lakers. And a lot of people were thinking that in their head as what just happened on my end, and that was lights out. They did not want to be a Mavericks fan anymore, for example, and the Lakers probably won this trade, giving away the biggest asset on their end that was in this trade was Anthony Davis, and a Hall of Famer probably, but one that's consistently not healthy and also sometimes consistently not playing to his potential. At the end of the day, Luka Doncic is a lot younger, and boy, I'm curious to hear what our chat thinks about this, and certainly our panel. I'd like to start with you, Derek.
Yeah, well, I I think in terms of the NBA scope, I mean, this is going to be similar to where were you on 9/11 type stuff, and um, just I cannot believe that this just happened. And I was playing guitar at the time, and I just see a notification on my phone, and it said Luca going to Lakers. I was like, what? But
Harper proceeded to destroy his guitar.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of any of the franchises, but I mean, just everyone just exploded based on what happened. I mean, Luka's 25 years old, Anthony Davis is 31, and you don't just trade a superstar for a superstar. That doesn't happen much in the NBA for people who don't know NBA trading.
Imagine the Mavericks getting on the phone with the Lakers and say, "We'd like to get Anthony Davis," and they probably are like, "No, we're not. We don't want to deal him, and well, we'd like to give Luka."
They were probably joking, saying, "Yeah, give us Luca," and they're like, "Oh, okay."
And then once they said, "Well, we'd like to give Luka in exchange," and they'd probably be like, 80 will be there tomorrow morning. You don't have to worry a bit about
Yeah.
that." Cody, I know you watch so much NBA. I'm exaggerating. Yeah,
Yes,
Cody.
big Supersonics fan here. No, um, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big NBA fan, but I know a big trade when I hear one. And that one was very surprising. I like the jokes that they say. It's hard to be the worst GM when your competition's Jerry Jones. In the city wise. So uh, I know Zach probably didn't like that one, but I don't know. Um, Luke is kind of a guy that he hasn't really been taking care of himself in the off season.
True.
He's gotten a little bit bigger.
I think
Um,
267 pounds.
yeah,
Gave up.
so he kind of has his own way of, I guess. Uh, I mean, he's still doing good. I mean, he's injured right now, but I guess he has his own way of doing himself. So I don't know. If the trade goes bad, Dallas is gonna look like they're gonna look like they had black magic.
Hmm.
Well,
But
uh,
if not, yeah, I don't know.
Marcus, if there's someone that watches less basketball than Cody, it's probably you on this
Mhm.
panel. Don't pretend to have thoughts if you don't have any, but I will give the floor to
Well,
you.
I will say I've seen some. I've seen on Reels the last couple days. Some people did like a little, I guess, memorial type ceremony at the Mavericks Stadium. I guess either mourning the fact that the Mavericks are never going to be good again, or that they just lost, their biggest superstar on the team. But I mean, I saw it from both sides. I saw Lakers fans were kind of upset that they lost Anthony Davis, and then Mavericks fans especially were upset they lost Luca. So
Indeed. Well, we got two more segments here, and we're going to get this show wrapped up under 2 hours. A much needed improvement over our episode one run time. And the final segment before we turn to the chat and answer some of the questions that have piled up throughout the show. Um, we'd like to it's almost like I feel like I'm promoting this, but I think a lot of people know as well. NASCAR has recently introduced a new partnership with the streaming service Tubi, where they have their own channel on the live TV portion. And they also, for this season, have a partnership with the Max streaming service to where they will have onboard cams for every race live. And let me just be the first to say, kudos to NASCAR. That was one heck of a decision
agreed.
for them to branch out and get their involvement into more outlets beyond just NASCAR. And I've been enjoying the heck out of Tubi. Worth mentioning that Tubi is 100% free to use. You don't even have to log in. If you can just have anything that has internet and can download apps, go to Tubi on the internet and you can watch as a guest their NASCAR channel. It's always replaying these classic races. Today, before we went live, it had Radioactive on and the 2014 Daytona 500. It's right now my go-to for bedtime to see what's on the Tubi channel. Um, Curious, Derek. As a college student, much like myself, who probably has to rely on streaming services more and their capabilities, how does this make you feel?
Oh, it makes me feel great. I mean, my main cable provider is YouTube TV, but there's no actual NASCAR channel that they have on YouTube TV. So whenever I found out that Tubi has one dedicated to it, and that they were also playing a bunch of Clash replays, and they even uh, had Flow Racing event, the Madhouse. It
Hmm.
was like a modified race. That was a lot of fun to watch, and I just thought it was a great idea on Tubi and NASCAR because now you can watch these races for free, and maybe we'll see some Daytona 500 stuff for this coming week.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. Cody, I know for the Clash yesterday, you used the Max streaming services capabilities to watch the onboards at the same time. How was that experience?
I think it was really. I think it's really unique. I think for us older fans here, Race View. Race View
Yeah,
was something really cool back in the day, and I remember my dad. I think if I got good grades, he'd buy me it for like a month or two
well, not
during the
often.
season. Yeah, so not often, you're right.
Yeah.
But we uh we as me and my dad, we both enjoyed it. He watched a bit of it too. Got on the Chase Elliott. It kind of gives you a little bit of a behind the scenes look almost. It's kind of cool seeing like the officials here, last minute talks to the drivers and everything, and getting everything set. So I really enjoyed it, and I will definitely be using it for probably a good portion of the season. Same with the Tubi channel. Tubi, uh, I've used Tubi before for other stuff, but I really enjoyed watching stuff. I watched the '79 Clash, the first ever Clash they had, which was like 20 laps, and Buddy Baker won it. But it was it's cool seeing that stuff, and cool to see them branch out and do a little bit more, in my opinion, for the sport than what they have done in the past.
My favorite part of the Tubi channel, before I give you the floor, Marcus, is that I'm watching races that I would never know who the winner was. and their Cup Series races, like the '79 Clash, for example. So it's like watching something fresh for the first time again, except it's NASCAR history in a sport that has such rich history. They had the 2011 shootout on last night, and that was so exciting to watch. While I remember who won it, it was so refreshing to just watch the entire race lead up to it. And Marcus, have you tapped into either the Max or the Tubi streaming services?
I've tapped into the Tubi service. I remember, I believe it was the '92 and the '93 clashes that I watched on Tubi there. And first time I've ever seen the races, I had no idea who was gonna win it. I remember Dale Earnhardt won the '93 clash. Jeff Bodine won in '92, if I remember correctly. Those are some fun watches for the first time. Also watched the modified race like Derek was talking about. My only hope with the NASCAR Tubi channel is that since NASCAR Race Hub was discontinued from Fox, that NASCAR does something like a daily or weekly talk show on there, like
Yeah, I agree.
Race Hub used to be. So use that, showcase your Race Hub, showcase highlights from the last race, like a day or two before, but make a talk show on there. Make a reason for people to want to tune in to Tubi.
Indeed, and we'll have to see what happens of that. And with that, that leads us to our final topic, our segment here, and it's always the most interactive one, the one we promise to end every show with. And that's the chat room open discussion. I know there's some chats that had piled up from earlier in the show, and as I scrolled to retrieve those, we did have some recent ones here, guys, and feel free to chime in if there's any that stood out to you. But uh, we saw Mark, for example, asked this a bit earlier. He wanted to hear our thoughts on Chase Briscoe and his new ride at JGR and what his maybe ceiling is. What's the limit for Chase Briscoe? And some might say kind of underwhelming with SHR, but you could also definitely blame that on the equipment, perhaps. He won one heck of a race at Darlington last season, and now maybe he's going to take a big leap this year. I'll start with you, Derek. Thoughts on Chase Briscoe's ceiling?
I think he definitely has a higher ceiling than he did on Haas Automation, and going from that number 14 all the way up to that number 19, taking over Truex's stride. I think he'll be let off the leash a lot more in terms of car performance, and he will be able to um, compete up there with people like Hamlin and all the other and Ty Gibbs as well for JGR.
Absolutely, Cody.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good eye opener for Briscoe. I think it's also a good job that Gibbs is allowing his drivers to branch back out and go dirt racing. Christopher Bell already has announced that he's running with Lance Deweese's former team, the 69X or 69K. He'll be doing a handful of races. So Ty Gibbs even got into midget racing a bit. Trace Briscoe, a well-known dirt racer himself. I think that Gibbs is looking pretty fly right now. If I'm a Gibbs fan, I'm pretty happy.
And Marcus, quickly some thoughts on this. We can get to some other questions.
Yeah, so I think Briscoe, I see him winning once or twice this year, making the playoffs, making it to at least around the 12. He definitely has potential. He's definitely shown that he can do stuff in like a way lower performing Stuart Haas. So now that he's going to be at JGR, who's still at the top of their game, like, how's he do? I think he gets a win. I
All
do have a
right.
question that I saw that I want to talk about
Yeah,
though as well.
bring it up.
Yeah, so it's from Cole Chandler. He asked, do we think with the amount of short tracks in California, like All American Speedway or Madera Speedway becoming tracks, should they become tracks for the truck series that go along with Sonoma weekend? And I want to start with saying absolutely. You've got plenty of California market there, lots of short tracks you've never really seen in NASCAR before. So let's take a chance on those, see how they perform for the drivers, see if that's something that the fans want. If it's something they like, let's stick around for a bit. We've seen IRP how that went.
I got something to say about that too. I think that's a great idea. I think the truck series has been shorted. I know
Mhm.
it's a lot of money to run a team. I know a lot of small teams in truck series, but the truck series just seems like it has too many breaks in it, and there's not really a good. No one really can get in a good momentum roll in the truck series. So I think adding more tracks to the schedule, short tracks or whatever, I think that's a great idea.
Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Cody about the momentum on that West Coast swing. I think they definitely need to put a little bit more races, maybe similar to the Xfinity schedule. More so, I believe they only run about 23 races a year, the Truck Series, compared to Cup who does 36, and I think Xfinity 33. So I agree with Cody there.
I think the Truck Series needs to be utilized more as the bridge from grassroots-esque to the upper echelon of NASCAR stock car racing. And by that, I mean Truck Series should probably be utilized more to venture out to those grassroots style tracks. We see them go to IRP, which is not exactly a pure local track. It's a step up just a little bit, but it's still a track that otherwise is probably wouldn't be on a NASCAR schedule had they not made the decision to put the trucks there, and it certainly paid off. Uh, like the example of Bowman Gray being the clash for the Cup Series, when NASCAR decides to go to these grassroots tracks, like perhaps Truck Series could do in California, they not only bring much needed refreshing track onto the schedule, but they bring a exciting one, one that really kind of translates to the roots of the sport, and like they did with Bowman Gray, they kind of professionalize these tracks, making them safer, adding safer barriers on. Those changes that will not be taken away when NASCAR leaves there, they are changes that should stay, and the track owners appreciate it. And
Yeah, something that the small tracks can't just pay for,
yeah,
like NASCAR can.
that's why when NASCAR comes to like Bowman Gray, like we saw this past weekend, it's giving Bowman Gray a much needed facelift to allow it to continue to transcend generations with racing. And I think that's what the Truck Series could really do. I think they should venture out more, which they are kind of starting to do. With that, well, one heck of a show we had, and to the over five, close to 10 people sticking around here at the end of the show. It shows 9 watching right now as I look over. We absolutely appreciate your presence. We're going to continue to work on making this show even better. We're just 2 episodes in, and this show we introduced these graphics to better keep up with what we're talking about for each show. And with that, same time next week. We'll be here Monday, 8 p.m. East, going live with the same familiar faces, and we hope we see the same familiar faces in the chat. Remember, every show is a chance to interact with us. We designate every segment to be designed around getting the chat involved, and we hope you join us for episode 3 of the Tune Up. For now, take care, be safe, be good, and 7 days from now, we hope you'll join us for episode 3. Goodbye, y'all.